Welcome to Project U 2.2, the podcast where life and leadership meet endurance. I'm Greg Helmer, joined by my wife and partner in life and work, Carrie. Each week, we dive deep into the mindset, the neuroscience, and the real grit it takes to stop drifting and start living with clarity, confidence, and endurance. This is about real life, real struggles, and real growth. So lace up, it's time to live with endurance. If you just listened to Carrie's conversation with Heike, you probably felt something steady and grounding. Not a bunch of hype, not performance, not noise, just pure strength. And I'll honestly say this, I was inspired because Heike isn't impressive simply because she's completed Ironman, triathlons, ultra marathons, and bodybuilding competitions. She's impressive because she had the courage to say, this season is changing. She talked about grieving the loss of being a runner, an elite runner. Not for a week, not for just a quick pivot, but for an entire year. A year of wrestling with her identity. And that matters more than any medal. When we release an identity, our brain resists it. Familiar patterns feel safe, even if they are outdated. Reinvention triggers uncertainty, and uncertainty activates stress pathways. That's why becoming feels uncomfortable. Your brain would rather keep you in something predictable than let you grow into something unknown. So when Heike said it took her a year to grieve, that wasn't weakness. That was honesty. She didn't rush it. She didn't pretend strength meant ignoring it. Heike endured it. And she used a word that keeps echoing in my mind, scan. In her SPARK framework, the first step is scanning, not reacting, not forcing, but scanning. Where am I really? What season in life is this? What still fits? What no longer does? Most of us don't scan. We sprint, we power through, and perhaps we cling to who we were at our peak. Heike, she didn't do that. She talked about something else that landed deeply, the energy household. How everything pulls from the same reservoir. Work, family, expectations, fitness, guilt, and identity. And here's where I believe the science fits. Chronic stress floods the system with cortisol. Over time, that drains the motivation, clarity, and joy. Pushing harder in that state doesn't build resilience, it actually burns us out. Sometimes what we call discipline is actually depletion. Sometimes what we call grit is actually exhaustion. Heike trained relentlessly in her early years. Waking up at 4 a.m., she practiced poses, she built a body, she ran miles, sheer force of will. And later in life, she had to learn softness. She had to learn boundaries. She had to learn she didn't have to carry everything alone. She had to learn that strength isn't always a force. That's endurance too. Maybe not muscle endurance, but identity endurance. A few years ago, I ran a marathon loop in the mountains of Utah. Long climbs, thin air, miles where you hear your thoughts clearly. I remember vividly around mile 20, a voice that showed up. You've done enough, Greg. No one would blame you if you just walked off. You know you could slow down. That voice isn't weakness. It's actually the brain conserving energy. The amygdala senses strain and tries to protect you. The problem is it can't tell a difference between real danger and growth discomfort. So it whispers safely when what you need is actually courage. But maybe your mile 20 isn't on a race course. Maybe it's in a hospital waiting room. Maybe your mile 20 is waiting for test results that may lead to a life-changing diagnosis. Maybe it's sitting across from someone you love, trying to repair something that feels a bit fragile. Or maybe it's staring at a bank account, wondering if you're going to survive financially. That's mile 20. That's when doubt gets loud. That's when fatigue feels permanent. And that's when quitting looks reasonable. You see, most people don't quit at the beginning. They quit in the middle of a treatment plan, the middle of a marriage, mid-career, the middle of raising kids, the middle of becoming someone new. And that's where our endurance truly matters. Not dramatic endurance, quiet, sustainable endurance. The kind that shows up again tomorrow, the kind that stays in the conversation, the kind that sits with uncertainty instead of escaping it. You may not be training for an Ironman like Heike once did, but maybe you're 47 years old and wondering who you are now. Maybe you're in your late 50s adjusting to a body that demands different care. Maybe you're simply tired, not physically, but emotionally, from carrying expectations that just no longer fit. That tension you feel, it's not weakness. It's growth pressing against identity. And as we learn from Heike, identity is powerful. Your brain attaches to roles, to titles, to who you have been. Letting go, it feels threatening, but clinging, it can cost you more than changing. Heike didn't cling to her peak version of herself. She scanned, she adjusted, she walked instead of ran. She picked up a saxophone at nearly 65 years old and allowed herself to be a beginner all over again. That's humility. That's courage. That's neuroplasticity, the brain reshaping itself because you dared to try something new. And that's available to all of us. So here's your challenge this week. Let's scan. Scan your life. And not Instagram's, not your neighbor's, but yours. What season are you actually in? Where is your energy leaking? What identity are you holding on to because it once made you feel powerful and strong, but now it feels heavy? And then take one honest step toward who you are becoming. Not a leap, just a step. Set a boundary. Rest without guilt. Have that conversation. Start something small. Let something old go. You don't have to run an Ironman. You don't have to be the strongest version of who you were at 30. You do have to decide whether you will cling or whether you will evolve. You see, endurance isn't about staying the same. It's about staying honest long enough to grow. This has been Project U 2.2, where we don't quit, we don't coast, and we don't surrender. If today helped, share it with someone who might be quietly living in a cage they no longer need. And every Wednesday at 6:22 a.m., Carrie brings the heartbeat of this work, mindset, growth, and the next brave step. Until next time, stay strong, stay real, and keep living with endurance. See you at 6:22.